Thank you, Nina Enrique. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. In a significant development, Russian President Vladimir Putin has agreed to a temporary halt in attacks on Ukrainian energy facilities. But he stopped short of endorsing a full ceasefire. And this comes after a call with U.S. President Trump, who hopes for a path to lasting peace. Malacanang has placed blame on former President Rodrigo Duterte for his administration's handling of alleged crimes against humanity during the war on drugs, leading to his arrest and transfer to the ICC.
Kung meron po sigurong dapat sisihin kung bakit nagpatuloy ang ICC, yun na rin po ay ang dating administrasyon dahil hindi sila agad kumilos patungkol dito sa mga kasong ito.
NASA astronauts Butch Wilmer and Suni Williams have safely returned to Earth in a SpaceX capsule after a 9-month mission following a previous setback with the Boeing Starliner. And the news starts now. Malacanang said former President Rodrigo Duterte has no one to blame but himself for failing to address the alleged crimes against humanity linked to his war on drugs, claims that ultimately led to his arrest and transfer to the ICC. Take a look. Palace press officer Claire Castro made a statement after Duterte's camp questioned why he couldn't be tried in Philippine courts instead of being handed over to The Hague.
Siguro po, kung meron mang issue patungkol sa hindi pagsampa ng kaso dito sa bansa, patungkol sa crimes against humanity, mas magandang tanungin natin yung nakaraang administrasyon. Dahil November 2021, humiling ang gobyerno, ang administrasyon mismo ni dating Pangulong Duterte. At ito naman yung nakarecord na ipahinto muna ang pag-iimbestiga ng prosecutor, ng ICC prosecutor. At dahil magsasagawa sila ng pag-iimbestiga, magsasampa ng kaso na dapat isampa. That's November 2021. Lumipas ang panahon, June 2022, hindi pa po nanunumpa si Pangulong Marcos. Sinabi po ng ICC prosecutor na hindi nagampanan ng administrasyon ni dating Pangulong Duterte yung pangako, yung undertaking na sila magsasagawa ng pag-iimbestiga at magsasampa ng karampatang kaso. Kaya po ipinagpatuloy muli ang pag-iimbestiga ng ICC prosecutor. Kung meron po sigurong dapat sisihin kung bakit nagpatuloy ang ICC, yun na rin po ay ang dating administrasyon dahil hindi sila agad kumilos patungkol dito sa mga kasong ito, na nirereklamo patungkol sa madugong war on drugs. Muli, ibabalik po natin, hindi po ba dapat sila nga muna ang nagsimula? Para kung meron pong dapat na ipagpatuloy ang Administrasyong Marcos patungkol sa pag-iimbestigang yan, ay dapat na simulan na po. So, wag natin ipahid ang kasalanang ito sa administrasyon ni Pangulong Marcos.
Last na lang po. So, wala pong kapangyarihan ng administrasyong ito para mag-utos din po, mag-utos ng pag-iimbestiga ulit doon sa mga kaso ng EJK at doon sa mga biktima ng war on drugs.
Kaya po nasimulan ang paghihiring sa Quadcom at doon natin nalaman at doon na ibulaslas kung ano ba ang nangyari sa panahon ni dating Pangulong Duterte.
Meanwhile, former presidential spokesman Harry Roque calls Duterte's arrest and swift transfer to the ICC kidnapping and a blatant violation of international legal standards and due process. Roque, who's currently in The Hague assisting Duterte's defense, warns that this could be a government-orchestrated abduction.
Ay kinakailangan legal ang pamamaraan ng pag-aaresto. Yan ang dahilan kung bakit yung mga bansa na sumapi sa International Criminal Court ay nagsabi na kinakailangan bago ipadala sa ICC, ihirap muna sa lokal na tribunal ang pagkatao ng akusado nang masigurado na yung mga illegal na pamamaraan para magkaroon ng jurisdiksyon ng hukuman ay hindi nagamit para sa paghuli ng akusado. Pero sa aking paningin, yung paraan na ginawa nila para mahuli si dating Presidente Duterte ay nagresulta sa napakatinding paglabag sa kanyang karapatan. Unang-una, nakita nyo naman, sabi nila dun sa kanilang sinumite na sa habeas corpus na sinampa namin para kay Congressman Pulong, na binasahan daw siya nung warrant of arrest. Hindi po totoo yan. Kasi wala pong pinakitang warrant of arrest. In fact, nagkaroon lang siya ng access sa warrant of arrest ngayong araw na ito. Kasi kagabi, bago pumasok sa detention facility si Attorney Kaufman, nagpa-print sa akin ng isang kopya ng warrant of arrest. At ngayon pa lang nabasa ni Presidente yung warrant of arrest laban sa kanya. Ilang araw na nakalipas matapos na siya ay naaresto at napadala rito sa dahig. So nakikita nyo na yung mga tao ng administrasyon hindi alam ang sinasabi nila. Yung sabi ng spokesperson ng DOJ na sila ang competent judicial organ, ehekutibo po sila, hindi sila hukuman. At saka yung sinasabi ni Castro na lokal na Dutch court daw, hindi po Pilipinong hukuman iyon. At dahil hindi nga sumunod sa provision ng Article 59, naging kidnapping. Saan ka naman nakakita? Inaresto. Hindi binigyan ng kopya ng warrant of arrest, hindi isinabi ang kanyang karapatan sa ilalim ng Rome Statute of the ICC na naging legal na basihan.
British-Israeli lawyer Nicholas Kaufman is confident that former President Rodrigo Duterte will be acquitted of crimes against humanity, charges before the International Criminal Court.
Former president is in very good spirits, looking forward to conducting his defense. A strong defense.
Kaufman says he's finalizing Duterte's defense team.
A counsel who's experienced in matters at the ICC, and it's that counsel's job to compose the team. It's early days yet. No one is entitled to draw any conclusion whatsoever from what has been or hasn't been done with respect to nominations at this point in time.
Vice President Sara Duterte confirms that former Executive Secretary Salvador Medaldea and former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, both currently in the Netherlands, are not part of it. Medaldea, who represented Duterte during his ICC pre-trial chamber appearance on March 14, reportedly fell ill before he could visit him in detention. As for Roque, Vice President Duterte says he's prioritizing his asylum application in the Netherlands. Meanwhile, President Trump and President Vladimir Putin recently had a phone call that lasted over 90 minutes, and they discussed the ongoing war in Ukraine. More from Thomas I. Likeness.
The deal comes after Trump and Putin held what the White House describes as a lengthy phone call on Tuesday. Washington frames the partial ceasefire as a first step toward a peace deal. Although Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he supports the deal, he wants to see what's in the fine print.
If President Trump can put more pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin in terms of details and force him to stop striking the infrastructure in the sea, if this is the first step and there are no other steps, then he should share the details on how we are going to do it. I am sure that Ukrainian and American sides will support any step that will lead to decreasing the number of strikes on both military and civilian infrastructure.
Zelensky reiterates that he does not trust Putin. The White House says talks aimed at a broader peace plan will begin immediately, but it's not clear whether Ukraine will be involved in the discussions, which will take place in the Middle East. As far as American military help for Ukraine, Trump told Fox News the issue didn't come up in his call with Putin.
We didn't talk about aid, actually. We didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about a lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
And while many hailed this limited ceasefire as a first step toward ending the war, it seems more like a baby step. Mark Kansian of the Center for Strategic and International Studies says it's disappointing there's no 30-day ceasefire. Kansian says Moscow wants a deal that puts Kyiv at a disadvantage.
Well, Russia is trying to get a ceasefire where no additional military aid arrives in Ukraine. And that would be devastating for Ukraine because Russia will continue to receive its military supplies, both from its domestic sources and likely from the Iranians and the North Koreans. So it would greatly handicap Ukraine. And of course, the longer it went on, the more handicapped Ukraine would become. It's a condition that the Ukrainians really can't tolerate very long.
Kansian adds the shooting on the front lines will still continue. Liana Fix of the Council on Foreign Relations says reaching a final agreement is going to take a long time, and she says what came out of the call between Trump and Putin is pretty thin.
There doesn't seem to be enough preparation on just the logistical and technical level to agree on anything. And there is, as always, a big concern that Donald Trump is open to narratives coming from the Russian side without having any access to the ground truth in Ukraine.
On the streets of Ukrainian cities, the limited ceasefire is being met with skepticism. There's a distrust of Russia. Ukrainians say Putin cannot be trusted. Others say now is not the time to relax, fearing Russia is just buying time to rearm. That's the same message coming from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She says the world order has changed, and Europe must rearm itself by 2030.
The era of the peace dividend is long gone. The security architecture that we relied on can no longer be taken for granted. The age of spheres of influence and power competition is well and truly back. Just take Russia. We already know its determination to deny other countries their right to choose their own path.
Von der Leyen says Russia's on an irreversible path to creating a pure war economy. And what's concerning, she says, is that 40% of the Russian budget is spent on defense.
And this investment fuels its war of aggression in Ukraine while preparing it for future confrontation with European democracies. And just as these threats increase, we see our oldest partner, the United States, move their focus to the Indo-Pacific.
It seems to be becoming more apparent that Ukraine might be the canary in the coal mine for Europe. An early warning of danger. Danger like the events of the 1930s that led to World War II. Interesting times we live in. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
Just hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed to pause attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure in a call with U.S. President Donald Trump, both countries accused each other of launching airstrikes targeting civilian infrastructure. In Ukraine, Russian drone strikes damaged 2 hospitals in the Sumy region, forcing evacuations, and injured a 60-year-old man in the Kiev region. Homes and businesses were also hit in the Bucha district. Additionally, strikes left parts of Sloviansk without power. In Russia, Ukrainian drone attacks sparked a fire at an oil depot in Krasnodar, though no injuries were reported. Russia's defense ministry claimed to have destroyed 57 Ukrainian drones overnight. Russia temporarily suspended flights from several airports east of Moscow due to safety concerns following the drone activity. Japan is rethinking its defense posture in response to a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape. The island nation faces increasing threats from nuclear powers like China, Russia, and North Korea, while also navigating a complex relationship with its traditional ally, the United States.
Thank you very much.
Recently, U.S. President Donald Trump questioned the reciprocity of the U.S.-Japan Security Pact, highlighting that the U.S. is obligated to protect Japan without a similar commitment from Tokyo.
You know, with Japan, we have a deal, which is a very interesting one. And I love Japan. We have a great relationship with Japan, but we have an interesting deal with Japan that we have to protect them, but they don't have to protect us. You know that? That's the way the deal reads. We have to protect Japan. And by the way, they make a fortune with us economically. There's another case. But we have to protect Japan, but under no circumstances do they have to protect us. I actually ask, who makes these deals?
This criticism comes as Japan is modernizing its military capabilities, including plans to deploy long-range missiles capable of hitting targets in North Korea and China. These missiles, with a range of about 1,000 kilometers, are set to be deployed on the southern island of Kyushu, bolstering defenses about the strategically important Okinawa island chain. This move is part of Japan's broader effort to increase its military capacity, driven by concerns over regional tensions and the reliability of U.S. support. Experts suggest that Japan might consider maximizing its nuclear power and potentially debating the acquisition of nuclear weapons, given the mounting threats from China and North Korea. However, this would be a significant shift in Japan's defense policy, which has historically been constrained by its pacifist constitution. By taking proactive measures to boost its military capabilities, Japan aims to strengthen its position in the region and potentially reinforce its alliance with the U.S. The question remains whether this new defense stance will deter enemies and sway Washington to maintain a strong partnership with Tokyo. Taiwan is bolstering its military readiness in response to heightened threats from China. Defense Minister Wellington Koo emphasized that Taiwan must be prepared to quickly mobilize its forces if China's frequent drills around the island suddenly turn into an attack. The 5-day rapid response exercises began on Monday to train Taiwanese forces for swift deployment against any Chinese aggression or gray zone tactics. This exercise coincided with China deploying 59 military aircraft and warships near Taiwan, which Beijing described as punishment for Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te's advocacy for separatism. China has increased its military presence around Taiwan, conducting joint combat readiness patrols every 7 to 10 days. Taiwan's defense ministry has set up anti-landing defenses near a key port outside Taipei and deployed surface-to-air missile systems at strategic locations. Taiwan strongly contests China's sovereignty claims, asserting that only its people should determine their future. The island nation is enhancing its military capabilities, including intelligence sharing and joint exercises with the U.S. to strengthen its defense against potential threats. The U.S. Navy is ramping up its submarine presence in Australia as part of the AUKUS agreement.
American attack submarine USS Minnesota was undertaking drills off Australia's west coast, ahead of a growing presence in these waters. That's under the AUKUS agreement to transfer nuclear submarine capability to Australia.
Opening tube 2, stay clear.
Australian officials said that by the middle of the year, up to 80 US Navy personnel will arrive at the country's HMAS Sterling base. And in 2 years, with 4 Virginia-class submarines like USS Minnesota there, those personnel numbers will swell to hundreds. The submarine's commanding officer, Jeffrey Cornell.
This is the most advanced warship in the world. What they gain is the capability to operate a nuclear-powered, conventionally armed warship. So the things that this brings to our Navy and to every Navy, that has nuclear-powered warships is significant and allows us to operate with essentially unlimited endurance, just limited by food, and be able to do all of the things that our country asks us to do at any moment.
The Virginia submarine program has been exempted from US President Trump's Pentagon budget cuts. A top administration official said the attack submarines are, quote, absolutely essential, both to make defending Taiwan viable and to fulfill its obligations to Australia. Under AUKUS, Australia's most expensive defence project, Australia will buy 2 used Virginia-class submarines next decade and build a new class of nuclear-powered submarines with Britain to replace its ageing diesel-powered fleet. US Navy officials said in preparation there are 115 Australians in the US Nuclear Navy training pipeline or on Virginia submarines, plus 130 training for nuclear submarine maintenance at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, US.
And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. Israeli airstrikes in the Gaza Strip have killed at least 5 Palestinians today, according to health officials in the enclave. The Israeli military targeted a Hamas military site in northern Gaza, claiming it was preparing to fire into Israeli territory. In Gaza City, an airstrike on a house in the Sabra suburb killed 3 people. Another strike in Beit Hanun town in the north left 2 men dead, 6 others wounded. These attacks follow a significant escalation of violence on Tuesday which saw over 400 Palestinians killed in extensive airstrikes across Gaza. The renewed violence comes after a nearly 2-month ceasefire was shattered. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the strike, citing Hamas's rejection of proposals to extend the ceasefire.
Hamas refused offer after offer to release our hostages. In the past 2 weeks, Israel did not initiate any military action in the hope that Hamas would change course. Well, that didn't happen. While Israel accepted the offer of President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, Hamas flatly refused to do so. And this is why I authorized yesterday the renewal of military action against Hamas.
Hamas, meanwhile, accused Israel of violating the agreement. Meanwhile, thousands of Israelis gathered in Tel Aviv to protest the government's decision to resume attacks on Gaza. Demonstrators marched towards the Defense Ministry headquarters, criticizing Netanyahu's actions.
I'm here to protest. My country is going down by the Prime Minister, and the hostages are still in the tunnels.
Trying to tell the people of the world that Israel is not going to stay silent when they're taking away our democracy.
NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams have finally returned to Earth after a remarkable 9-month journey in space.
NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams finally returned to Earth in a SpaceX capsule on Tuesday. The crew enjoyed a soft splashdown off Florida's coast and were welcomed back by a pod of curious dolphins. Their return caps a protracted space mission that was fraught with uncertainty, technical problems, and political spectacle. They were stuck in space for 9 months after their faulty Boeing Starliner craft upended what was meant to be a week-long stay on the International Space Station. Issues with the Starliner's propulsion system led to cascading delays to their return home. Then the mission got caught up in politics after it captured the attention of US President Donald Trump. He called for a quicker return of Wilmore and Williams when he took office. He also alleged, without evidence, that former President Joe Biden abandoned the pair on the ISS for political reasons. NASA acted on Trump's demands by moving Crew 9's replacement mission up sooner, according to the agency's ISS chief, Joel Montalbano, on Tuesday.
See, we work for the president, and who's ever there, we work for them. We had an input from that office. We took a look at it. And, you know, our job is to take all the inputs we get and operate as successful and safely as we can. And that's what we did for this administration, and that's what we would do for any administration.
The agency had swapped a delayed SpaceX capsule for one that would be ready more quickly. They said they sped through its methodical safety review process to heed the president's call. Wilmore told reporters earlier this month on a call from the ISS that he did not believe NASA's decision to keep them on the station had been affected by politics under the Biden administration. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, a close advisor to Trump, had echoed Trump's call for an earlier return. He said the Biden administration spurned a SpaceX offer to provide a dedicated Dragon spacecraft rescue mission last year. NASA officials said the 2 astronauts had to remain on the ISS to maintain adequate staffing levels. They said they did not have the budget or the operational need to send a dedicated rescue spacecraft. Crew Dragon flights cost between $100 million to $150 million. Boeing had hoped Starliner would compete with the SpaceX capsule, but this mission has thrown its development future into uncertainty. NASA's Commercial Crew Program Chief, Steve Stick, said on Tuesday that Starliner needs more tests before it routinely carries U.S. astronauts.
You know, we're certainly looking at Starliner very carefully. We're in the process of looking at that vehicle, looking at the helium system. We've got some candidate seals that we're going to replace. We'll get into some testing here over the summer timeframe with what we call an integrated doghouse at White Sands. So we're looking at that.
Boeing, which congratulated the astronauts' return on X, did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
The World Meteorological Organization has confirmed that 2024 was the hottest year on record.
2024 was the warmest year on record at 1.55 plus or minus 0.13 degrees above the 1850 to 1900 average. And whilst the mean of those 6 data sets is 1.55, being above 1.5 degrees, at the lower end of that uncertainty range, of course, it would be below 1.5. So we can't say for certain that 2024 was more than 1.5 degrees above the 1850 to 1900 average, but it is likely.
With global temperatures reaching an unprecedented 1.55 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and this surpasses the previous record set in 2023 by 0.1 degrees Celsius. The alarming rise is largely driven by record-high greenhouse gas levels, which are accelerating glacier and sea ice loss.
This shows glacier cumulative mass balance from 1950 to 2024, and this is the change since 1970, so that's where the 0 is. And you can see that over time, the reference glaciers used in this calculation have lost over 25 meters water equivalents of ice. And indeed, in 2021 to 2024, the glacier mass loss over that 3-year period was the most negative 3-year glacier mass balance on record.
Tired of missed deliveries? A new robot named Milo aims to solve that problem. Created by a robotics company in Switzerland, Milo uses artificial intelligence to carry packages directly from delivery trucks to your doorstep. Take a look.
If you like to shop online, you might very well meet Milo on your doorstep in the near future. The 4-legged robot was designed by a Swiss robotics company to carry your packages from the delivery truck to your door, easing the burden on delivery drivers.
It's a very exhausting job, so what we are building is like an augmenting that workflow by having a robot that covers some of these miles so the driver can focus on other things.
That final stretch from delivery truck to a customer's door is often one of the most time and labor-intensive parts of the job. Marko Bialonic is the CEO and co-founder of River Robotics. They designed Milo to tackle that final stretch, known in the logistics industry as the last mile.
In the meantime, the driver can either sort packages in the back, they can do parallel deliveries because a lot of these stops you have to go to multiple locations at once, or the driver can take a rest or chit-chat with the neighbors. Yeah.
The robot uses AI technology to navigate obstacles in its path. And River recently showcased Milo at NVIDIA's annual software developer conference in California.
So we are building this with NVIDIA tools that we use. So we're collaborating already for many years, since 2018, with NVIDIA, building on top of simulation environments where we train for reinforcement learning how this robot reasons when it goes around the world.
Milo is equipped with 4 legs that allow it to hop down from a truck to the ground, wheels that let it whiz down the sidewalk, and a crane-like arm on top that can hand parcels to customers. River robots are already making real-world deliveries in Switzerland, and Bialonic says the company is eyeing expansion in the U.S. to cities including San Francisco and Boston.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.